You ever get that feeling that you've seen this person before? Like you've seen them. You know you've seen it. The face, the hair, in the game's case, a model? Well, you'd be right, because you have. Welcome to Genshin Impact, where every single NPC has the same look. So what is the problem? Why am I talking about NPC models in Genshin? Well, you can kind of pinpoint where this starts to be an issue, or where it starts to be kind of strange. And I'm gonna get into some story spoiler stuff here. Let's introduce Tepe. He was a character in the Inazuma arc of the game, who was not necessarily a side character, but he was a little more relevant than most NPCs wind up being. He's short-lived, but he has a decent role. And what happens to Tepe, you might ask? Well, I just said he's short-lived. What do you think happened? If you don't remember, he basically dies due to the use of a delusion. Who's this? Well, if you remember, he's actually Kazuha's relative. He appears in a single cutscene in the Iridori Festival in 2.6. Amazing, he looks like any old other guard. What I'm trying to get at here is that a lot of NPCs who shouldn't totally feel forgettable do feel forgettable. Now, is this common? Is the kind of washed out, very similar NPC, undetailed look common? Yes. In a lot of JRPGs, there tends to be a few NPCs who kind of just appear for one or two scenes and they look like everyone else you've seen before. This happens in games like Scarlet Nexus. These NPCs have less detailed faces that ultimately don't make them stand out. However, a lot of the time, JRPGs also take time to make some notable NPCs look different, so you can remember them and you remember who they are. If they ever need to reuse the character, it's important that you're able to tell who it is just by looking at them. Even Hoyoverse's other game, Genshin Impact, has several NPCs who reoccur during the story, who are designed very differently, despite the fact that you may never get to play as them. I mean, Genshin even does this with La Senora, who she's dead, I guess. You might say, Hoyoverse is rolling in cash. They're making millions. Billions, maybe? It's a common misconception that throwing money at a problem will solve it. A lot of the discussion has kind of moved on from that, but it is a very common thing to say, this company makes so much money, why isn't this better? The reality of it is that you can't just toss money and make a problem go away. There are a lot of different factors that go into the overall problem. It's a little important to keep that in mind. I think the problem is not necessarily that Hoyoverse doesn't want to do it. It's actually a problem with what Genshin is for. So on all of your devices, you have storage space. That space is limited. Genshin is an ever-growing game. Preloads are usually larger than the final file size, but for instance, this current preload for the current patch we're on took 20 gigabytes. And for a variety of reasons, it was larger. You don't need to worry about that yet. My point that I'm getting at here is that storage is the main problem. As Genshin continues to grow, it's important to keep in mind that it is still a mobile game. Most mobile phones you want to have it on have limited storage. For example, even phones coming out recently have removed the ability to use micro SD cards, or even SD cards in general. So any extra space you could possibly want, it's gone. Not to mention how many other things a phone needs to be used effectively aside from just Genshin. These storage requirements are a big piece of why NPCs are probably not as detailed as they should be. Hoyoverse from now on will likely continue to take steps in order to prevent space from being overloaded by things that are relatively not necessary. Since they make so many characters that you can roll for in the game, and the game is open world and adding new areas that are large file requirements, it's kind of hard to make the NPCs who are just not going to be entirely important into unique character models. All of this being said, they have taken extra steps to make some NPCs look a little more unique. Takuya, the blue Oni from Arataki Ito's story quest, has a more, well, he's very blue. His skin tone is a little washed out, and he has blue markings on his face. Also, he has blue horns. The whole point I'm getting at here is that there's a step there to make him not necessarily totally feel like an unimportant side character, but he's recognizable. Additionally, Halfdan in the Chasm quest is also recognizable. He has a different hairstyle, as well as different clothing, in order to make him a little more recognizable, despite the fact that he only appears for a few seconds. I want to say for that matter that I think that's the right direction to head in. Only time will tell if this winds up being an issue. I think this is the best that it's going to be, and honestly, this Band-Aid patch solution works for me if it means that I don't have to take up my entire storage space with Genshin Impact. I do like to play other games. Other games are fun. More fun than the somewhat monotonous grind that Genshin can be on occasion. I just thought this was a somewhat interesting topic to discuss. I don't truly have any major gripes with the current state of Genshin and the NPCs overall. I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about, as there are a lot more issues that go into games than just simply money and staff. I think sometimes it can be a bit jarring from a storytelling standpoint to just have a somewhat important NPC just look like any other generic character you could find on the overworld, but I don't think it's going to be an issue going forward, as most of the time with story stuff and main story stuff, Genshin tends to use existing rollable characters. But what do you think? I want to know. Do you think that Hoyoverse should make unique-looking NPCs? Do you think they have the right idea? Do you think that there's a better way they could approach it? What do you believe? I just want to know. Let me know in the comments. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like. And subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more content about JRPGs and just video games in general. Anyways, I'm off. And I'll see you guys next time.